So when I work with clients as an executive coach, one of the reasons they may seek my help is really helping them prepare for future career growth. So it can often be leaders within organisations. They may be in a sort of a high potential category, and they've sought a coach to help them figure some things out to optimise their chances for future career growth. And when we talk a little bit more about that, I try and help them think about, okay, what are organisations looking for? What are they actually, what is it? What are the questions you need to answer to allow you to access the next level of sort of development effectively within the organisation? And so I tend to try and think about a very simple frame. Now, assessments can be very complex. There's a lot of variety across organisations around how they choose to assess people. And it goes from very robust, where they'll have multiple sort of stages, where they'll use quite a lot of sort of science-based assessment tools, and they'll use multiple lenses and multiple people, and it will feel very rigorous and it'll take a long time. Or it could just be you go and have a coffee with someone and then you shake hands. So it really does vary, but I would say increasingly organisations generally getting more sophisticated in their ability to assess people for the future, and that's both internal and external candidates. So this is probably equally applicable if you're an external candidate looking for a role within a large organisation. So I guess there's the three things they tend to look at. So the first thing is generally competency. So you generally provide a lot of information as part of some sort of assessment process, either it's an online application, or it's a CV, or it's your LinkedIn profile. But basically they're looking at competency. So they're asking the question, is this person competent? Will they be able to do the job that we need them to do? And this is often based against some kind of role profile, or it's some sort of success profile. And these are generally written to be sort of, very, very extensive. So I'd always say to candidates, if you're got a sort of 60 to 80% match to any kind of job advert, you probably should apply for it, because there's probably nobody out there actually meets the profile. And I always laugh when I look at profiles internally and I look at the person who's doing the role and think, this isn't the same person as on the profile. So profiles are there by definition to say this is sort of like the exemplar type person we'd need. Most people who are in those roles aren't quite at that level. So I wouldn't say get too worried about the about those profiles, but recognise they're aspirational. But effectively, what the organisation is trying to figure out is: are you competent? Have you got the previous experience? Have you acquired the previous skills? Have you got the academic qualifications, the knowledge, the know-how to be able to do this job? And so that's critical. So you've got to be really good at demonstrating through all the different tools you have, your competence to the organisation. The second question, so the organisation will ask, if they've asked, well, are they competent to do it? The next question is, well, will they do it? Because on paper they look great, but actually when they land and they turn up here, will they actually be able to do the job? And this is this wider question around sort of capability. And this is much more than just the technical skills. This is about their leadership style, their interpersonal skills. Can they land in an organisation that's new, or into a new role, or into a new context? And can they navigate that context? Can they land and hit the ground running? And this is the classic sort of 90 days. Can they in those first 90 days build their brand, get people to understand what they're trying to do, understand from the organisation what needs to be done, reset, and then deliver some early wins. So capability is much more than just the technical competence and the experience they've got. It's their abilities around their interpersonal skills, their leadership style, and that's something that organisations are getting much better at assessing for, around things like personality profiles, where they're saying, well, okay, all things being equal, this is the sort of personality of this person in any given situation. This is how they're probably most likely to behave, and you can see then there are certain personality traits that will predispose towards certain contexts. So the organisations are getting much better at saying, well, this is the context the candidate's going to come into. What sort of person's going to be most likely to perform? So you as a candidate have to think about that. So get your competency right, but then you have to think about capability, this ability to actually land and deliver the job. And then the third component that the organisations will look for, and these are really important, especially if you're working with sort of like founders, where it's a really sort of personal thing where you're coming in, into their sort of their domain, is culture fit. So really say, okay, so can they do the job? Will they do the job? And then will they fit in here? And culture fit is again something that organisations are getting better at looking at. They're looking at people's motivations. They're looking at their drivers. They say, okay, what's the expectation and mindset of this person? And are they going to be someone who can thrive in this kind of culture? Or are they someone actually that the culture may start to reject? So there's always a challenge in organisations to say, we often want to bring someone in who's new and different. So we want to introduce into the culture some kind of difference, but we also understand the culture is very, very powerful. And if you bring someone into an organisation who's countercultural, well, unless you're giving them huge amounts of authority and resources, the culture is going to chew them up and sort of spit them out. So culture is absolutely critical. And as a candidate, you have to be very, very cautious, I'd say, about going into a culture that's very different to what you've known or maybe what you've appreciated. So culture fit is critical because it will be the thing that day in, day out starts to affect you, and it will affect your ability to be motivated. It will be it will either sort of energize you to become your best self, or if the culture's not right, it just slowly sort of denudes you. And generally people derail in organisations and leave organisations. It's not, in that sort of first year, 2 years in role, it's not generally because they're not competent. They've got the right skills. They've probably got a pretty good package of capabilities that allow them to land. What often is the case is there's just a cultural misstep. So I'd always say to candidates, think about how do you best market your competencies, think really carefully about that. Think about your capabilities in terms of how you're going to land into the role and how you're going to actually have the impact through relationships and those early wins. And probably most importantly, be really clear with yourself. What is the culture that you need? What is the culture of the organisation? And how much of the organisation that you're looking to work with, are they really clear what they mean? If they're talking about a culture add, if they're using that phrase, we want you to come in and add something new to our culture, I'd say really explore that very carefully, because if there's too much difference there, that could be a very challenging assignment. Doesn't mean you don't do it, because it could be a great source of learning for you and the organisation, but it could feel very bumpy. So yes, hope that helps.